Here's an excerpt from Our Constitution, The Way It Was by Dr. Madeleine O'Hare.
Seemingly, no one knew just what to do. There was no clear-cut program. Some wanted to try to continue to negotiate with the British government. Others wanted to continue the armed revolt in the hopes of forcing the king and parliament to remedy their grievances. There was no one, apparently, who had the vision to call for complete severance of all political ties with Britain and to found a new nation. The situation remained stalemated until the end of the year. Then, in January 1775, Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense, came off the press. It was like a fresh wind clearing away a fog. In the simple yet forceful language that characterizes all his writings, Paine showed the absurdity of continuing a relationship of colonies to a mother country. Why, he asked, should the colonies, already peopled with 3 million inhabitants and destined to expand to cover a vast continent, be ruled from a small island 3,000 miles away? Why continue to be subjects of a tyrant king when the way was open to be citizens of a free republic? This pamphlet spread like wildfire. The small presses of the time could not keep up with the demand. Hundreds of thousands of copies were issued and penetrated to every colony in a short time. Paine's arguments were unanswerable. They left no middle ground. All talk of compromise and further petitions to Parliament died out. The debate was carried into the Continental Congress, and in a couple of months, a committee was appointed to draw up a formal statement. Thomas Jefferson was selected by the committee to make the draft. 6 months, almost to the day, after Paine's Common Sense appeared, Congress issued that famous document, which we call the Declaration of Independence. It has often been claimed that Paine actually composed and wrote the Declaration. This is debatable, and there seems to be no strong evidence to that effect, but that he was the man, more so than any other, who caused it to be written, no one can deny. All of the leaders of the Revolution gave him full credit for solidifying the sentiment for independence. Washington, converted by Common Sense, wrote asserting that Paine's words were, quote, sound doctrine and unanswerable reasoning. Jefferson, John Adams, Franklin, and Madison all wrote praising Paine's flaming arguments. In later years, Thomas Jefferson said of Paine, quote, no writer has exceeded Paine in ease and familiarity of style, perspicuity of expression, happiness of elucidation, and in simple and unassuming language, end quote. Franklin said, I value myself on the share I had in procuring for America the acquisition of so useful and valuable a citizen as Thomas Paine. John Adams wrote, history will ascribe the Revolution to Thomas Paine.
Our Constitution, The Way It Was by Dr. Madeleine O'Hare is now available at atheistaudiobooks.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. With me, I have a couple of goofballs that represent the Mythicist Milwaukee. How y'all doing?
Pretty good.
We're doing good. Goofball, I'll take it. I've been called worse. Right?
Yeah, that if only the listeners had heard the pre-show, it was getting pretty graphic. I have Sean, Brian, and Rob with me. How you guys doing?
Not too bad, Phil. How are you?
I am, of course, freaking awesome. Just in case you didn't know, my show does allow swearing.
Okay. If I can think of a swear word, I'll bust it out.
Yeah, if you need a hand, I can text you a few.
Jason's researching right now.
I can even send you a few in Italian if you'd like.
Fuck that.
Yeah, that's one of them. The best one in Italian, by the way, is vaffanculo.
Vaffanculo. Io posso parlare un piccolo italiano anche.
Sì, io parlo molto italiano. E tu?
Molto?
Sounds better than gosh darn.
Shucky darns.
With a name like Phil Ferguson, I should have known you were Italian.
So who was doing the little bit of Italian there for me?
That's Rob. Rob's kind of a polyglot.
Yeah?
How much? I refer to myself in the third person there. Sorry. Yes,
That's okay.
Rob does good voices.
I speak fluent Spanish, so the other Romance languages are pretty easy to.
And fluent Sean Connery, well, too.
Yeah.
Fluent Sean Connery.
Do an impression. What's the movie stuff? Brian, silly man.
And what is your name? It's Pussy Galore. I'm sure it is.
think Phil likes to swear on his show.
I do. And I have told people many times that I finally did find something I like better than talking. That was hearing the sound of my own voice.
You're a dirty accountant, Phil.
A dirty accountant. Well, actually, technically, I'm not even an accountant.
Oh, sure. Now you were told the guy talking about scandals at the Reason Rally. Here comes out. You're not even qualified. Come on, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't ever claim to be qualified at much, but especially with the clients, they have to sign a contract that says they recognize I'm not a tax expert or a legal expert.
Right. Fiduciary laws. We talked about these.
What's that?
Right. Yeah, but you're there. You consider yourself to have a fiduciary responsibility for your clients.
I do indeed. So that just means that I have to try to do the best based on what I know and believe to be true. But still, things can get fucked up. But
yeah, still not much regulation there, is there?
Well, it's funny because how much regulation do you want? I think something a little bit more than what we have. I a few months ago had a show where I talked about a guy who was in the military. And he told me the story about how he had, I guess, hooked up with, made a deal with a investment company. And what they did was they would charge 50% commission on everything you added to your account in the first year. And then after that, for the rest of your life, it's free. Mm. And so they would say, even if you're paying someone, 1 or 2 or 5%, you don't have to keep paying it when you add new money. You pay the first year and then you never pay again. Well, they set him up with an IRA, and that a year later, the guy calls him up and he says, hey, you know what? You need a Roth IRA. So they open up a new account, and guess what happens? The clock starts over on the new account. And then they open up a taxable account, and then they open up an additional IRA, so he's got 2 IRA. So after 12 years of being in the military, he had 10 different accounts where he paid 50% of all the money he put in for over a decade.
Front-loaded fees, right? Like A fees? Or
well, those weren't A fees because A shares are front-loaded. Front-end loads are limited to 8.5% by law. So what they do is they create what's called a wrap account. So they wrap their loving arms around you like a fucking boa constrictor and squeeze the shit out of you. But if someone, people talk to me all the time, I go, well, my agent doesn't charge me anything. They put it in a wrap account. And I'm like, oh, my God. Ooh. That means it's worse, dude. I don't know how you missed that part. But anyway, enough about me. People know my show. What's this Mythicist Milwaukee thing?
Well, we're lucky enough to be gaining a little bit of ground in the podcast world. The Mythicist Milwaukee show has been going on for, a year and a half, guys? A little bit longer than that, I suppose.
About 2 years.
Yeah, evolved from a radio broadcast with a local personality that the guys happen to run into, and then ended up parting ways philosophically and simply taking over the idea of having our own secular podcast and shining a light on the black hole of secularism that is Milwaukee here. The 10 of us that are actually atheists in town, pretty much.
Well, I think the most interesting thing that you said there was the part that you were trying to obfuscate, hide something.
Obfuscate.
Yeah, obfuscate. Difference of opinion. What the hell was that?
Well, there was a difference of opinion on what ought to be said. I would constantly, research as much as I could on guys, and there was a particular podcast where we were interviewing R and Ra, and none of my work was used. And
it wasn't only that. It was the gentleman that we were producing the show for. He actually gave us an opportunity to produce an actual AM radio show in town, and he liked the idea of the secularism bent. So we started setting up big name guests. We had Lawrence Krauss and all these different people that from the atheist world.
Annie Laurie Gaylor, David
Silverman, just big time. And the host himself, 6 months in, decided that he wanted to essentially convert back to Christianity. So he didn't want to be a part of that, part of our topics anymore. So, yeah, we had to part ways that way. And, we had all these guests still on the schedule, and we decided to just create our own podcast and keep it going.
And I think I'd listened to so many YouTube. Like I spent hours and hours and hours listening to Jacqueline Glenn and R and Rod. It just the list goes on. That we finally felt like this is good to create content that let's ask questions that haven't been asked or ask them in different ways just to continue to explore this.
Right.
That makes sense, Phil. He was an old, like a 70-year-old AM radio local host.
It all made sense until you said he reconverted back to Christianity.
We're not really sure where. I mean, he's an old guy.
Wrap my
he's
fucking
facing
head
his own
around
mortality, so who knows what. He was a Catholic Jewish guy by his birth, and he sort of embraced what we were doing.
Embraced the atheism.
Mythicism. He embraced mythicism. He embraced free thought.
Yeah.
And he wasn't really sure what free thought meant. I think by free thought he thought that he could be a Catholic who talked to agnostics on the radio. And I don't think he ever really moved away from theism. He was tickled by the fact that we called him the godfather of free thought. And, you know what I mean? But he was a good guy in his way, and he gave us a little springboard into this whole thing. And now it's just gotten...
And podcast media is going to replace AM radio, obviously.
Right,
so it's
right.
Just a better way to do it.
Yeah, so that's how it
Well,
all
they recently had a story about Rush Limbaugh and how he continually loses viewers through a process I call death. And they were suggesting that possibly his show would move to a podcast format until they realized that something like 90% of his listeners wouldn't be able to figure out how the fuck to do that. So
yeah. Old school.
Yeah. Well, they're going to see the light one way or the other, right? Either through death or...
they're going to see a light at the end of the tunnel, and they're going to head towards it, and that's that.
Or you become rational and realize that this is an entertainment show at best and not news.
Yeah, you are a fucking dreamer. If you've been listening to Rush Limbaugh for 25 years or more, odds are slim that you're going to become a secular and rational person. But, it happens.
And as a one, I grew up Republican, and I used to think that was legit.
Yeah, so did I.
So,
but that's not 25 years of Rush. That's you becoming an adult.
But I know people that listen to Rush. I know people who are on our side of the fence who like to listen to that opposing viewpoint and kind of make fun of him the whole way. And I don't.
They call them masochists.
I don't know how you can do it. It makes me angry. It makes me upset to even give the guy the time of day, and the fact that I can't reach across the airwaves and choke him. It's too frustrating for me.
Well, when I'm driving cross country, I will often listen to something like Rush Limbaugh or Christian radio because I get so pissed off I can't fall asleep at the wheel.
God.
There you go.
So
that's better than many things.
I suppose I choose Rush over Christian radio.
Boy, it's a toss-up, man. I don't know. But you guys ever get people that contact you or email you that hear the show and love what you're doing, but yet don't seem to fully get what you're doing?
No, we really don't. We really don't get a lot of that. We are relatively young. The organization started 3 years ago. As Rob alluded to, we were essentially trying to create a secular community in Milwaukee because that's just lacking and it doesn't exist. So we started with various initiatives. We traveled to Egypt and Greece to kind of get we like focusing on the mythicist position and taking a look at how the supernatural characters in the Bible are purely mythological and pointing that out and bringing that out. So we traveled. We went to Egypt and Greece and Nicaragua and all these different places for primary research. We came back. We shot a documentary on the Muslim Call of Prayer in Michigan. That's actually being allowed to take place in Michigan. Then we started the podcast. Since then, we're doing conferences and making a movie, Batman and Jesus. Really excited about that. But essentially, the overall goal of the group is to kind of do new and creative things to popularize atheism.
Did you say Batman and Jesus?
Yeah, Batman and Jesus.
I sure hope the fuck that's better than Batman and Superman.
Well, we're hoping. I mean, what we're doing in that movie is we're taking the mythology that surrounds Batman and showcasing it in comparison to Jesus, because when you look at Jesus' story, it depends on what script or what text you're reading it out of, but you see all different types of versions of his story, and how he evolves over time, and how he does many different things. And it's the same thing with Batman. You look at the earliest versions of Batman to today's Batman, where he can fly with Superman. It just kind of changes. So we're really excited about that.
So now let's give the listeners a couple of examples. We are recording on a Sunday afternoon, right after you just did your live show, and of course tell us where they can find that. But this recording will go up, a week or two late. So what can they go back to and listen? What's your recent stuff?
Well, we just got done with Ken Fader, who's an archaeologist, to help debunk some of the mythological claims that are made of, like, Native Americans, for example.